Hi, this is Joe Gotchy. I want to say something about this particular episode of Echo Ekoji. It was recorded in a Pizza Hut, and it's important for you to know that there were extraneous noises. It was a challenge to record this particular episode, but deep listening will pay you dividends. There are some wonderful things said by not only our fellow Jodo Shinshu Buddhist, but also by a Presbyterian minister and also a Jewish rabbi. Please listen and enjoy the episode.
Welcome back to Season 2, Episode 4 of Echo Ekoji with Joe Gotchy and me, Andrea Chapman. Our aim is to illuminate the lay voice, and we plan to release programs regularly in 2024. Ekoji Buddhist Temple is located in Fairfax Station, Virginia. We host in-person and streaming Sunday services at 11 a.m. Eastern and Dharma Breeze services led by Reverend Kurt Rye via Zoom on Wednesdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. Additionally, Ekoji offers seminars, book and movie discussions, meditation sessions, and special events like our annual Obon Summer Festival. More information about our temple, services, and programs can be found at ekoji.org. Joe, what else would you like to share with our listeners about Ekoji?
Thanks, Andrea. Ekoji is one of 60 Jodo Shinshu Buddhist temples across the United States that make up Buddhist Churches of America. We're a community of people joined in revering the teachings of Shinran Shonin, who lived in Japan between 1173 and 1263, by saying the Nembutsu, Namo Amida Butsu. We seek to share the wisdom and compassion of Amida Buddha, and by doing so, we work toward the realization of a society in which everyone is able to live a life of spiritual fulfillment. Our tradition is family-friendly, welcomes everybody as they are. Andrea, it's time for you to introduce our fourth, fifth, and sixth guest for 2024.
Thanks, Joe. It is my privilege to introduce Matt Doubrava and his colleagues. Matt is an Ekoji Sangha member who will help us come to know Ekoji even better.
Hi, thanks for inviting us for the show. The three of us here, myself and Chris Martin, and I'm so sorry about your name. But yes, we're active duty military officers, but we have to make it absolutely clear. We don't represent the views of the government or the United States Navy. We're here as private citizens just talking about some of our religious experiences, and we're happy to share them with you.
In a couple of minutes, Matt, what would you like to tell our audience about yourself, your guests, and where you are today?
Well, hi, Andrea. Hi, Joe. Thanks for asking me to do part of the podcast. So I'm Matt Doubrava. So a lot of the members have met me. I'm a commander and a physician in the Navy. I'm on active duty. I'm stationed on the Harry S. Truman, one of our 12 aircraft carriers. We're stationed here out of Norfolk, Virginia. We're going through a big workup cycle because we're going to deploy soon, and we're going to deploy to some of the more kinetic spots that are happening in the Middle East and in the Mediterranean Sea. And I'm really lucky because our ship has 20 different departments. I run the medical department, but we also have the Command Religious Ministries department. And when I told my friends about this podcast, they wanted to come and join. And I thought this is a great idea. So with me is Commander Chris Martin. He is our ship's chaplain. And I'm going to butcher his name because I can't ever say his name right. Is Lieutenant Commander
Jonathan Ward.
Yeah, I see. I can't say it. And but he's our rabbi. And so I said, hey guys, we're going to have this little podcast. Why don't you come join me? Because I think there's a good way to show how Ekoji and Buddhism has changed my life is to be so much more receptive and expansive with other people. Because now that I feel like I have some kind of spiritual grounding, it's so much easier for me to interact with other people with spiritual grounding. And so I was excited to bring them along.
Excellent. Matt, this is a real pleasure. How long have you been in the Navy? Where did you do your medical residency or medical training? And for people who are not familiar with military ranks, what does it mean to be a commander?
So I've been in the Navy for about 21 years now, active duty for the last 19. I transferred over from the Marine Corps. I started out life after college as a Marine Corps officer for a few years, and I apparently got hit in the head a lot and woke up in medical school where I got trained at the State University of New York, Buffalo, for medical training. And then what I did is I went to the Navy to pay for the school because they offer scholarships for physicians because there's a big demand for them. And then that's how I transitioned over to the Navy. And then I came back to active duty in 2005, and I've been here ever since. So I've had overseas assignments to include deployments to Iraq. And then I was stationed in Japan for a year and a half with the Marine base over in Iwakuni. So we lived 30 miles south of Hiroshima, which was and ironically, I was not Buddhist then. I didn't even think about this until many years later. And then I'm a commander, so that's the equivalent of lieutenant colonel. And people I think are more familiar with those ranks. And the rabbi is a lieutenant commander, that's equivalent to a major. So
Very good.
Well, that is fascinating, Matt. So we are going to jump right in here. We're super curious. Why do you attend Ekoji's Sunday and Wednesday hybrid services via Zoom? And how would you say that these services contribute to your sense of community and spiritual fulfillment, especially when you are such a great distance from the temple?
Well, I think it's because I'm a great distance. That's why I do the Zoom. And I think it's one of the great advantages in Ekoji so I started out coming to Ekoji because in 2020, I transferred from Ohio to Maryland to Pax River. And I was filling out my medical induction form for the local clinic. And they said, "What's your religious preference?" I put none. And I said, I didn't like that answer because, 10 years earlier, I was trying to be Catholic because my daughter was born and she was baptized Catholic by her mother. And I wanted to be the same religion. And I went to the Rite of Christian Initiation. And I'd go to Mass once in a while. I kind of noticed I enjoyed going to Mass because it was time where my mind would shut off and I could focus on the sermon and the meditation and greeting the people. And I liked it, but I got away from it. And then 2020 hit. I'm like, I put none. I said, I don't think I like that because I meet people who are like over religious, and it's like, oh, that's annoying, And then I said, but I got to find something for me. But I've been through, I was raised Lutheran, tried Catholicism. I said, I want to try something that I think it can reconcile all the experiences I've had. Because I mentioned I used to, I've been deployed to Iraq, and I saw a lot of things, bad things happen. I worked with a medical examiner in Las Vegas for a couple of years. I saw very bad things happen. And I said, I have to find a spiritual context where I can reconcile these things. And I thought I never knew much about Buddhism, so I started to learn about it. So as I started to learn about it, I was looking for temples, like the Gupta temple up in D.C., but then I came across the Ekoji temple in Fairfax. And I said, well, this is Japanese-based Buddhism. I'm like, well, I lived in Japan, so I really enjoyed the Japanese culture. So the Japanese culture and influence on Buddhism might be something I'm interested in. So when I came through to Ekoji and learned about Shin Buddhism, and it's a lay oriented practice, and it's really about the Sangha, learning about the Dharma, appreciating the teachings of the Buddha. It was it like fit for me, so that's why I joined. And so I think one of the advantages, since I was so far away, I've only been to the temple twice, and I think the first time I went there, you made me mow the lawn. I said, I'm just going to zoom in from now on. Less yard work. But I think what we found was there were groups of people who were very interested in technical difficulties. Rabbis having technical difficulties. We found that there were a lot of people who wanted to experience this, but they couldn't come. And then now there's a virtual world where we can be part of this. And I think that's really one of the ways we get fulfilled. So I regularly tune in to Sunday as often as I can if I have signal. Even when I travel, I tune in. Like I turned to the Sangha when my father passed away and I flew to Las Vegas, and you were the first group of people I turned to. We were in Mallorca, the island of Mallorca in Palma, Spain, and I had enough cell signal to tune in one Sunday. So you guys have broadcasted into Europe without license, mind you, but I'm sure it's okay.
Yeah. Thanks, Matt. That's a wonderful response. I'm going to ask Commander Martin to answer the following question first, and then Rabbi Warren second, and Matt, you third. So in what specific ways does your religion influence your daily life, And can you give us an example of how your Christian faith, your Jewish faith, and your Buddhist faith, the principles from those inform your decision making as a military officer and a spiritual leader?
All right, well, thanks for the question. Thanks for letting us be here. I've been in the military for a number of years, served as a minister on the civilian side before the military. In the Navy, we tend to think of the Navy as these big, giant ships. We got planes, and submarines. What I like about my faith and my job is we get to focus on the people. And because it really is still about relationships and connections. So it's connections to your family, connections to the spiritual, but also just making friends with those around the ship as you endure some really tough stuff. So for me, just my faith allows me to be reminded of those connections and then help other people build the same thing in their lives.
Thank you. Rabbi?
And in the middle of this conversation, there's a good answer. I like him. So I want to stay away from the statement of faith for a little bit and just focus on practice, because Judaism is very much a religion of practice. I think it's kind of one of the things that connects us, the Buddhist world and the Jewish world, and just in terms of setting time and setting that space for an actual practice. That every day in the morning, whether I'm fully feeling it or not, I'm going to make sure to set that time for, we can call it meditation, we can call it prayer, we can call it reflection, but that time is going to have to be sacred. And if I do set that as sacred, it flows into the rest of my day. It flows into the rest of my interactions. And I think that's the essentiality that I'm desperately trying to instill in everybody of every religion. But certainly for my faith and my background, that's where it all sits.
Thank you. Matt?
Well, so what I like about Buddhism is that it's a sense of you're on a journey for a sense of enlightenment. And what I try to do is try to understand where I always am. And so examples of how Buddhist practice would influence me, because we, I look for the middling way. And for me, there's never an answer why, right? I'll see people in crisis and they'll say, why is this happening to me? And I said, really, there's no why. Or if there is a why, you're not going to figure it out. Or if there is a why, you're not going to understand it. So stop focusing on the why, because that's really part of why you're suffering, why you're practicing. Understand things happen, and now you got to figure out how to cope with it. And I think that's a Buddhist lesson. And we incorporate that, and it's not a monopoly on that. It's just that's how I put it in context. So I think I've had experiences which I think fit into the Buddhist context and gives me a sense of, I've had really bad things happen to me personally, like divorce and things like that. But now I understand, and I went crazy trying to figure out why. And now I understand there's no why. It's okay not to have a why. What I have to understand is it is, and what do I do?
Thank you very much. Andrea?
So, Matt, I remember you shared with us a picture of your Obusudan that is on the ship, and that got a lot of likes on the Instagram page. I'm wondering, are there any particular practices or rituals that you practice when you're away or daily to help maintain this balance?
So, well, thanks to my colleagues here, they have opened the ship's chapel to me Sundays at 12:30 for about an hour for self-led Buddhist meditation. So they just say this is, and there's not many people on the ship who identify themselves as Buddhists. I think, am I the only one so far, or some people have inquired?
We have names on some rosters. It doesn't mean they're necessarily showing up in practice,
right,
in a public place.
So when they offered this, I want to make sure I take advantage of it. So I will go in there and I set up my little meditation stool and last time I took my singing bowl, and for this time around we actually hit up Amazon. We got some incense now, We're gonna see if we can get away with incense. Claims on ships not so great, but I think they let us get away with that. And then I purchased a 9-inch Buddha statue just so I can leave with the department, in the chapel. So for our purposes, in Shin Buddhism, we don't really have the image of Buddha per se, because we don't want to have it perceived we're worshiping an idol. It's but it was just kind of nice to have that there to show that other people, Buddhism is done here, so we can include anybody. I'm excited about the meditation part, because one of our other fellow officers, he's a captain, that's the equivalent of a colonel. He's Muslim, and he always wants to meditate. So now I can invite him, like, hey, come with me to the Buddhist meditation. You can meditate, So it's fun. It's fun that way, and that's what I really appreciate. That's why they're here. So this is how I pay for rent in the chapel.
That's great. Matt, I'm going to ask Commander Martin and Rabbi Warren to answer this as well in a slightly different way. Have you faced any challenges or encountered misconceptions about Buddhism within the medical or military communities? And how do you address these misunderstandings? And I'll ask the two other gentlemen whether they've learned anything from you about Buddhism that may have helped them better understand our tradition.
Some misunderstandings. Again, I've had multiple medical tours as well with Chapman. And what I think, I've run across a number of professionals like Matt, men and women with multiple degrees, and yet they are practicing Buddhists. Researchers with PhDs who are very focused on science, every detail of science, and yet they still acknowledge the spirit. And so I think that would be the one misconception I think I've run across, is that, you're in this high education environment. Religion doesn't exist there, right? Absolutely not. It exists everywhere. And so you find people of faith in all these different environments, military, medical, and elsewhere. And so I think that'd be the one I think I've seen with Buddhists, is actually a higher percent of Buddhism in probably the medical and researcher environment.
Very good. Lieutenant Commander Warren, how would you respond to that?
I learned something from Matthew Doubrava every day.
Yes, a lot of this useless trivia.
It's a totally different question.
Yeah, like, there's 3 golf balls on the moon. We all need to know that. Come on.
So, to not speak to that part, but just a little bit of just misconceptions about Buddhism. So, both Commander Martin and I have been in this world of ecumenical, I think is the word that we're using these days to describe a religious context like this, interfaith interactions, and just listening and learning from each other and trying to grow and trying to appreciate other religions, and how people use them to help ground them. We also have found a whole bunch of misconceptions. People who will assume, it's Buddhism, therefore it's idol worship and that's evil or whatever it is. I think that a lot of the baseline of what religion looks like outside of the southeastern United States needs a lot more. It needs more in high school, like middle school, probably elementary school. We could do well to teach about other world religions, and also to show that Buddhism is a very, very broad religion. How it's experienced in Japan, which is what I understand Matt's experience is, and India, and how it's even experienced in Europe, where it is also similar to the United States, right. Kind of exiles here. So as a person who just appreciates that it's a broad religion, I'm already, I'm seeing that there's a lot of that. People are first learning about it. And I'm so excited that we have somebody who knows and loves his faith in Matt, that I'm able to say, hey, I got books, I got knowledge, but the person you need to talk to is somebody who lives it. And if his version doesn't match with you, there's others, like, do that stuff. And we're going to support you however we can.
Yeah. 84,000 paths. Right? There's 84,000 paths. So I haven't really experienced any misconceptions per se. I do run into people like, for example, like I was saying earlier, I'm using the chapel to meditate, and the religious programmers, which is actually an enlisted rate, who assist the chaplains, they'll run in like, you have anything you need? We thought you needed pillows. We need to order you pillows. We're like, no, you don't have to order pillows. So it's more of like just people who want to help me, but they want to make sure they know how to help. Right? Or occasionally I'll get like, hey, you're Buddhist, should you be eating vegetarian? Like, oh no, man, come on, Buddha's last meal was pork. Come on, we all, it's okay, really. And so it's kind of fun that, but not a misconception in a harmful way. It's just people are curious though. So that's what I've experienced.
Excellent, thank you.
So, Matt, can you give us a specific instance where your understanding of Buddhist principles such as compassion and mindfulness have positively influenced your interaction with your colleagues or your patients in the military setting?
Yeah, I mean, so there's a lot to say about mindfulness. There's a lot to say about compassion. And I think there's a lot to say about searching for gratitude everywhere. And in the military, deploying around the world, deploying on ships, it's not the safest environment. We do see tragedy. And some of those tragedies can't be rectified, and we've actually throughout my career, I've lost patience. And as I look back on it, it's like, well, I have to search for the gratitude in that. And they taught me to be better at what I do. They taught me that I can be resilient when I face impossible odds. Because some patients you approach, no matter what you do, they will pass on you. And it's not you that's the problem. You're doing it, but you're trained to do everything you can. And in the training, you always win, right? Whenever we simulate like cardiac arrest scenarios and stuff like that, we always get the patient back. In reality, it's rare. And I think what I do is I look for the gratitude in that, because now we understand how it really feels. Now we can go forward and not be afraid the next time this happens. We can throw everything we have at somebody, but if the outcome is not what we expected, we still know that's okay. And we're learning even more.
Thank you very much, Matt. Given your experience as a Buddhist, how do you view the concepts of patriotism and service to the country? Has your Buddhist practice shaped your perception of that in a significant way?
Well, so often I'm like, hey, I'm Buddhist. I'm focusing on compassion and empathy and things like that. How can I be in the military, right? Because we're really good at breaking things, right? That's the whole. We serve on a $14 million warship. Its primary job is to go break things, and how do you reconcile that? And that's, I think, why like the Shin Buddhism, because it was meant for everybody. It was part of the creation of Shin Buddhism was to include the hunter and the fisherman, right? Because they were excluded from Buddhist teaching because they actually had to harvest animals for food, and they said, no, that's not a thing. You can't do that. And then when Shin Buddhism came along and said, no, you have to do these things, but you have to be mindful of it. So, and Shin Buddhism from Japan, if you go to the Japanese Self-Defense Force, you're going to find military members who are Buddhists. So like, it's not incompatible. And I think whatever I do is I'm being mindful of how it can affect others in a good way or positive way. I can reconcile it with the requirements I have to do for military service. And I think it's also better that those who are very mindful of what their actions are in military service is a good thing to have in our military, because we do wield a lot of power, a lot of physical power. And it should only be used in instances where it can actually benefit the most people. So we're going to deploy next year to areas, and our primary job would be a lot of containment. So there's conflict in the Middle East right now, and we're there to help. We can't get involved too directly, so we have to contain it as much as possible so it doesn't spill out. And that's what we're there for. So that's a very mindful act, I think. And that's how I deal with it.
May I say something along that line? What's unique about our jobs, chaplains, and meditators is that we actually advise the CO on some of these missions. And so wouldn't you want somebody who has a good foundation, faith, or community, or family, who's going to be the ones advising the CO on some of these missions that we go on? I think, again, that would be another way that faith allows us to influence how we interact and how we go about hopefully not breaking things and but actually helping people.
We sometimes scare people into not breaking things.
Great answer. So I think this next question could be posed to all three of you as well. What advice would you offer fellow military personnel who might still be exploring their spiritual or religious path while they're serving, and how can they integrate their spiritual beliefs with their duties and responsibilities?
Actually, we had a guy this week kind of show interest in talking to Buddhism, and they were thinking about sending him my way to talk to me. And it's like what I've said before. It's a Buddhism covers a lot of bases, right? It's religion, it's a philosophy, it's a way of life, and it's meant for all comers to find out what they need from that combination to give them what they're looking for. So, I mean, it's very interesting religion because it's an atheistic religion. It doesn't believe in a supreme being, but it's considered very religious because of its rituals. And it does have an attitude of compassion towards everybody. So it's very considered a philosophy, and it's considered one of the more ethical philosophies because it tries to look at all sides. And it's a way of life. So it's something you can incorporate in your everyday life with concepts of mindfulness and compassion, and trying to be part of a sangha, which I find extremely important. So that's how I would introduce things to people. The first book I went to was the very short introduction series. I think it's put out by Cambridge, and they have one on Buddhism. So that's the first thing I went to, because it's like 90 pages. And then it gives a very broad overview of the history of Buddhism, but then it starts turning you into the idea that it's a philosophy, religion, way of life. And you're going to look at all those different facets to kind of determine what's best for you.
Thank you. Jodo Shinshu Buddhism really emphasizes gratitude. Can each of you share a moment from your daily life where you consciously practiced gratitude, and how did it affect your mindset?
We're having a lot of inspections and assessments this week, and I often clash with our local assessor because we're in the same field, and we have very differing ideas about what our measurement of performance should be. But at the end of the week, I'm very mindful to show gratitude for them. They're there. They're trying to show us a better way. They try to show us the way that they think works for us, for where we're going. They want to support us. So yes, very mindful gratitude for some of our inspector friends this week.
For me, I think just grateful for the opportunities that I get to do. And I think on a daily basis, you want to focus at the conflict. I want to focus on my caster list, but to be able to pause and reflect on the freedoms that I have, the family that I'm supporting, and just hundreds of people I can interact with every day, and just have relationships that talk about all types of topics. I'm very thankful for that. I think this opportunity for ministry is unique in my world, and it's a neat place to be. So it does make me grateful.
Thank you.
So as we go the opposite direction again, because that's what I do best, is make sure we have a full balance in the chaplain department. Every day, one of the prayers that is built into the Jewish prayer cycle is a pretty short prayer, but it's actually to be said after you pee in the morning or after you go to the bathroom. That just is a reflection of, thank God I can pee. Right? Like, everything works. If anything gets stopped up, it's a medical emergency. If anything is open that should be closed, it's a medical emergency. That this thing works. Right? We rarely stop to think about how amazing it is that it just does the basic things. And so every day, like Judy said, you hit the bathroom, wash your hands, say a blessing. And that has always been, ever since probably I was kindergarten, and I think you can tell why. That's always my favorite prayer, but it's always my most grounding, most get to the roots. What thankfulness means. I'm thankful that this thing works.
Later, sometime this year, we're going to get a third chaplain who's a Catholic priest. So I'll have a rabbi, a priest, and a minister. I'll bring them all to you and I'll release them all on you.
Fabulous.
We'll be broadcasting from a bar.
Yeah. This is great. It's the little things in life, like being able to pee. Okay. This question may be exclusively for Matt. Is there a Buddhist text, teaching, or practice that holds particular significance for you?
So I would go that I'd say for reading, the River of Fire, River of Water was probably the most significant book I've read so far. Just because, first of all, it was one of the first books, and it had and it really talked about the middling way. You have to be in between the banks of the river, between fire and water, and so I think that was the most influential one. So it's not a particular Buddhist text per se, but as far as a Buddhist, a introduction to Buddhism, I think that was the one I really would reach for first. Which ironically I don't have on the ship. So I have all these other books because now my wall safe, which is broken, so it has to stay open all the time, is now my little Buddhist shrine. So it's in a safe now. So
very good, Matt. How do you reconcile the self-power initiative and leadership aspect of your medical and military careers with Jodo Shinshu's reliance on the three treasures, the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha, which seem to reflect our need to be reliant on other power, on other people, on Amida Buddha, for example?
It's interesting. If you ask these guys, they'll go in my office, and where I sit at my desk, there's a big whiteboard. I have a big sign right above my head pointing to me. It says "World's Shittiest Buddhist," because as a military leader, as a military officer, I find myself I do yell at people, a few times a week. They've seen it. They've seen me really go off and chase people around and kind of like give them direction that cannot be misunderstood. And after all that's bad, and so that's why I joke about all that. But when it's all over, like, look, I can't be doing this. And the reason I can't be doing this is because I'm Buddhist, and I have to go back to the teaching. So I always feel bad after I yell at somebody because I should be better at this, which is why I have to practice. But as Maya points out, it's like, hey, I'm a Buddhist, not a Buddha. So and I have to kind of really restrain myself and grow into this, which is why I'm grateful for Buddhism, because it gives me a center point to go back to and say, this is what the Dharma and the Sangha and the teaching of Buddha will teach me, is how to be a centered person. And I shouldn't go yell at that guy, even though he's messing with my corpsman. Anyway, so that's kind of like, that's kind of like when I talk about self-initiative and leadership, it goes back to like some of the answers I had earlier. Like I know there's no reason why, but it's something we do, and it's something I want to do well.
Matt, you might want to erase your whiteboard and put bamboo mat up on the whiteboard. The word bamboo means foolish being, and we are all foolish beings at times. Yeah. Andrea?
Okay, so Matt, I think that you can offer us some really valuable insight here with your role as a medical doctor and a Buddhist practitioner. How does Jodo Shinshu Buddhism shape your understanding of birth, death, and the human experience?
Well, in one way, I think, like I said, this is a very experiential religion. And I had experiences that I came into Buddhism, which then suddenly put everything in context. So back in 2016, I was diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. And my friend, who, we were looking at the clinical computers, I asked my friend who's in the Army, Rich Cummings, I said, hey, would you look up my lab results? And he looked it up and goes, man, I'm trying to tell you, you have non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. I said, don't worry about it. Now that I know what I'm going to die of, I'm winning. He goes, well, I've never heard anyone express that before. And part of it is when I was doing all my training in the medical examiner's office, and I saw a lot of people die alone in very unfriendly circumstances. No family was around. No one was there to take care of them. No one even knew they died. It was the neighbors didn't see the old man across the street for a while, and there's a funny smell coming from his house, and the police would call him for a welfare check. That's how you find out you died. And I said, that's not for all these people, that was unexpected. And for someone to hand me a diagnosis that say, hey, you may not survive this thing. It might be the end of your life. I said, well, now that I have this thing in front of me, I know what to do. I know how many people I have to call. I know how many more books I need to read. I know how to fulfill my life the way I want it before that ends. So in a way, that was a gift, knowing that the impermanence, which is a big concept in Buddhism, that the impermanence was right there, but I had the opportunity to do something about it. And I think so when I came to Buddhism, and where I thought I was just crazy, is no, I actually understood my experiences taught me about impermanence, and now I have a context to put that in. And I think that's where Buddhism has been really great, because for a while I was very skeptical of religion, and people who are overly religious. Not like these guys, right? These guys they're pious men. I've always appreciated pious men, but a lot of people use religion, I think, for their own perspective, and they don't want to hear any others. And when I found Buddhism, and I no longer had to write none on my induction forms for religious preferences, I felt I can interact with people of faith and say, oh, I have a faith. It's very different than yours, but it really keeps me centered in where I want to be. And so I think now it's given me a great gift, so I can interact better with people who are Presbyterians or Jewish, and I now can have very deep. I can really appreciate what it means to them for their spiritual beliefs.
Very good. Thanks, Matt. We are now down to our final two questions. And although the next question is going to be aimed at Matt and Buddhism, I'd really like to hear from Commander Martin and Lieutenant Commander War on this as well. Regarding Ekoji services, do you find meaning in the moments of meditation and chanting included in our rituals? And how do these elements contribute to your spiritual practice and connection to the temple community?
So meditation, definitely, yes, because when it comes time for meditation, I really focus on my breathing, which is really hard to do. When you sit there and just think about your breathing, it's hard to do. Or I've also done some of the courses through Everyday Buddhist, which is great. And then they show the clip of Ellen DeGeneres trying to meditate, and she's thinking about grapes. So I think about breathing, and I think about grapes because I'm thinking about Ellen DeGeneres trying to meditate. So, but I find that to be one of the more important practices. And as far as chanting goes, I love the chanting because sound is unbounded and spreads throughout whatever medium's there. So sound is boundless. And I think that's an important concept of Buddhism. But I have to admit, I'm bad at chanting. So I do a total UB40, and I just kind of lip sync to you guys when you're chanting, which is why I'm online. I just mute myself. I'm like, yeah, I'm chanting. Because I am very bad at chanting.
Commander Martin, how about you? How important are rituals and prayer, perhaps, or perhaps even singing in your tradition?
Absolutely. Rituals, music, very important to my faith. Whether it's during a church service, I play guitar, lead worship, or what's the songs are on my Spotify. Again, the environment we're in on the ship, 5,000 people, it's never quiet. There's constant noises, machines. And so to find time or make time to pray, to meditate, to listen to music, put the earbuds on, is absolutely to help center ourselves so I can connect to God. And that's how I lead worship with people around us as well.
Rabbi Warren?
I think one of the great misfortunes to the Jewish people is that music is part of services, which means that when I lead it for other people, they have to listen to me sing.
You sing quite well.
That's kind of you.
I told them about how we unrolled the Torah last week, the giant Torah that we had.
Oh, yeah.
And then it was amazing because he comes in from the back. And so we had about 120 people attend this unrolling of this. How long is it? It's about 75, 100 feet long.
We decided it was 16 tables.
Yeah.
Each table 6 feet. So
yeah. But he just runs in from the back carrying this giant Torah, singing along. And as he gets to the middle of the group, says, I'm not singing by myself, and this whole community starts singing along with them. So it was actually quite impressive.
It's good when they sing along because then it drowns me. But I appreciate Matt being kind to me. But the fact is that there is a lot of music. There's a lot of chanting. Even when I pray by myself, there will be a lot of individual chanting because I have a certain amount of undiagnosed but definitely present ADHD. And just hearing it and hearing it surround me gives me a space almost that extends beyond me and allows me to be in a holy space, despite the fact that I do most of my prayers under a catapult. And it makes it a much more pleasant experience. It literally adds some soul into the service. So when I pray, absolutely, there's music. I do listen to all kinds of music, and just the interesting for Judaism, much like Buddhism, is it's it's like Christianity. It's a large swath of the geography that fills the music. So for my family, which has Middle Eastern roots and has European roots, we got a whole bunch of stuff that throws in there that might sound very Middle Eastern at moments. It might sound very Northern European at moments. And for some reason, it all kind of still works.
That's great. So before I ask Matt the last question that we ask all of our guests, I just want to let all of you know what a wonderful experience this has been. And it's actually is written into our temple bylaws by our founding members that one of the purposes of our temple is to bring awareness to the world's religions. So, in the most serendipitous way, this has unfolded today. So, thank you. Thank you all for attending, and thank you, Matt, for making this possible. So, Matt, we ask everyone this question at the end of the podcast. What does Ekoji mean to you?
Oh, well, thank you. So first of all, I gotta tell you one more thing. So when the rabbi says he does this under a catapult, he's not kidding. It's a literal catapult. So when everyone goes and watches Top Gun, and you see the planes being shot off the front of the aircraft carrier. That's a big steam-driven piston that does that. And so when you see those planes being shot off, you have to know there's a chapel right under there with people praying or meditating. So they got to do that. And then we sleep in part of the ship where the hangar bay is right above us. And I think at 2 a.m. is the time that they drop chains right on top of our roof. And it's like living with Marley's ghost. So it's like every day it's a Christmas carol in there. But anyway, so what does Ekoji mean to me? Well, Ekoji became the center of they became the center of my spiritual guidance. Like I found them, and they gave to me the context of everything I was looking for a sense of spirituality, and they gave me a sense of community with the Sangha. They gave me a sense of direction with the Dharma, and they gave me a sense of purpose with the concept of seeking enlightenment through the Buddha. So that's what Ekoji means to me.
So, on behalf of Ekoji Buddhist Temple, we thank you for watching this episode of Echo Ekoji. Please like us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram, and watch us on YouTube. Visit ekoji.org and BuddhistChurchesOfAmerica.org for more information and resources. Additionally, our Canadian friends can visit Jodo Shinshu Buddhist Temples of Canada at bcc.ca. Ekoji's mission is to create a worldwide Sangha through our in-person and streaming services and programs. We'd like to thank Matthew Doubrava and his colleagues for sharing their insights and thoughts with us, and for your service in the United States Navy. Along with Joe Gotchy, I'm Andrea Chapman, and we're grateful for your support and encouragement. Namo Amida Butsu.